Today we are going to dive into dietary principle number 4 from the Weston A Foundation in their Wise Tradition Dietary Principles. And Lord willing, this will be my last video without a microphone. So I just ordered one, you guys. It should be here very soon, and I'm hopeful that that will remedy the audio issues that some of you have had on your devices. I've checked things on my end, and the sound comes through just fine when I'm listening on my devices, so I don't know. I know every device is different, but I am hopeful that using the microphone will eliminate that for you guys so that there won't be any issues. So hang with me. If you're having trouble hearing right now, just make sure that the audio is adjusted both on the YouTube video and on your device. So there's actually 2 places to adjust video in YouTube. One is on the video itself, so make sure that's turned up under the settings of the video as well as your device audio, and hopefully that remedies anything. But again, soon we won't have to deal with that. So if you are new here, welcome. My name is Amanda Willis. I empower families to wellness authentically through biblically rooted principles. And on this channel, right now, interspersed with some of the other content that I am posting, we are working our way through a series going through the dietary principles from the Weston A Foundation. So you can dive right on in with us with dietary principle number 4. They're not in any sort of particular order. And then check out the playlist on real food basics with the dietary principles to review the other ones and stay up to date as we get those covered. All right, you guys, so this one's actually very short, and the principle is eat some animal foods raw and cook most plant foods. All traditional cultures cooked some or most of their food, especially plant foods like grains and vegetables, but all consumed a portion of their animal foods raw. So this is contrary to a lot of what we've been taught. You will notice that theme time and time again. Things that we have been taught to do nutritionally haven't exactly produced the results they've promised, right? We have had a growing epidemic of chronic disease, especially here in the United States, but the Western world and throughout the world that has adopted a lot of our dietary principles, not these dietary principles, these are the ones of our ancestors and traditional cultures, but the ones that the United States has promoted for a long time and other Western cultures, we've just watched health decline, right? Even those traditional cultures that start to implement those, their health declines as well. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in diving into what are the things that have worked for a long time, and especially when they align with biblical principles, and sometimes they're not going to exactly, right? The Bible is not written as your particular, like it's not meant to be a health reference guide with your food pyramid or whatever in there, right? That's not the point, but we can take principles from there, and I cover that more deeply in our biblical health principle videos and series that we've done, and in my newsletter I talk about that often. But here, okay, so if you process this dietary principle, cook most plant foods. Now, I'm not sure if you have heard a lot of the chatter, or if this is partly my algorithm on social media, but I have heard a lot of concerns over toxins in plant foods, right? So this is where a lot of the carnivore paradigm comes in, and people are wanting to avoid plant foods completely. Now, I don't believe, if you've been around here for a long time, you've heard me say this, and if you're new, this will be the first time you hear it, but I do not believe in eliminating anything that God called good. If he says this was good, then who are we to call it evil? I don't believe in that at all. And so I don't believe that plant foods should be avoided. I do believe that there are traditional preparations of plant foods that we really would benefit from going back to and looking at again. So one of the big things is tons and tons of salads and raw vegetables and raw juices, and all of those things can actually cause a lot of issues in the body, because your vegetables that are high in oxalates, or things like kale and spinach. You're getting massive amounts of those in their form where the oxalates are the most toxic when they're raw like that. Now, when you take spinach or kale, those are just the two top, I feel like, popular raw greens, right, that people are wanting to consume a lot of, and they tend to consume them raw. That's when those oxalates build up. However, when you take them and you cook them, that helps to break down a lot of those compounds so that they're easier for your body to digest. Now, this doesn't just apply to greens, though I try to cook my greens as much as possible. And when I don't cook them, I am using a salad dressing that is very high in apple cider vinegar or another fermented raw vinegar with those enzymes that are going to help break down the toxins in the plants as well. Now, you also want to be consuming your foods. We talked about this in a previous video, consuming those plant foods with lots of fat as well. And so not just your raw green, like you used to take broccoli and dip it in a good ranch dressing. Then people got scared of fat and they started avoiding ranch dressing. And then we started thinking for some reason that raw broccoli was healthy anyway, and that we should eat a lot of raw broccoli and we should eat it dry. Gross. And I used to do it, you guys, but now, why would you do that when you can slather it in really good nourishing fats and things, and that helps the broccoli to be broken down. Also, cook your broccoli. It's much better. Okay. And then eating some of your animal foods raw. Now, this can sound really scary, and some people take this to an extreme because traditional cultures did cook some of their animal foods too. That's why the principles eat some animal foods raw, not eat all raw. I'm not a fan of the full raw foods diet. We've cooked since we've had fire, right? That's actually been a part of human culture. No other animal cooks their food, but no other animal wears clothes or builds houses or any of that either, right? On their own. Some people put dogs in clothes, but that's different. So the raw animal foods, this can be things like sushi. It can be things like raw oysters. Of course, all of your common sense principles apply here. Make sure it's sourced well. Make sure it hasn't been sitting out at room temperature for a long time, that it was kept cold so that nothing weird was growing in there. Now, sushi, the things that you traditionally consume with raw oysters or sushi are things like ginger and wasabi and things like that actually have anti-parasitic properties within them, and so they are great to consume along with those raw things like your sushi or your oysters, or not just seafood. I love a good beef carpaccio or a steak tartare. Those are all wonderful things. Of course, the healthier your meat is to start with, the better that is to consume. You don't really want to make it a practice to eat a lot of raw CAFO-fed meat, friends, right? But also talking about some of your raw animal products would be things like raw dairy. And I know this gets controversial. This is not a whole video on raw milk, but again, when it's sourced well from a place that they are doing good hygiene practices at the same time as caring for the milk well, then you have healthy milk. I would not advocate for raw milk from industrial cows. I just wouldn't, because those areas tend to be very dirty, and then you have dirty milk, and then you don't want that raw, right? But when you pasteurize it, you ruin a lot of the enzymes that actually allow proper assimilation and easy assimilation of the naturally occurring vitamins and minerals that are in there. So you really want to be able to absorb all of that well, instead of it being a very hard to digest food, which has become the case for a lot of people. I can eat a whole lot of raw dairy when it's really good, grass-fed, small, like micro dairies. It comes from a smaller dairy, has been handled properly. I do really, really well with that. But you get me conventional dairy, and I can only handle the tiniest little bit before I start getting really inflamed and getting indigestion and congested and drainage and all of the things, skin issues and things. So there is something to be said for the manner that you consume your food, not just what you're consuming your food. And that is dietary principle number 4. Remember, you can grab a copy of this booklet from westonprice.org, and I will pop that link for you down in the description below. If you have any questions about how to incorporate this, or you've run into struggles along the way, that's why we're doing this series. So you can ask your questions down in the comments. I'm always happy to answer. If you are local to me in Casper, we have a local Weston A Price chapter that meets regularly once a month, and we have been working our way through these principles and chatting through them, troubleshooting with each other. And there are chapters all over the United States and in some other parts of the world as well. So be sure to look up where your local chapter is. You can always get in touch with your chapter leader, and they're able to help you find local sources around you in your area. That is our one required job as chapter leaders, is to keep a list of local food sources so that we have it to provide people when it's requested. So that's all I have for you today. Until next time, take care, friends. Cheers.